When did you realize your mom was living a double life? The charity gala invitation felt like sandpaper between my fingers as I stared at my mother's name printed in elegant gold script. Guest speaker, Patricia Whitmore, volunteer coordinator. In 3 weeks, she'd stand at that podium, accepting praise for her tireless dedication to children in need. The same children she'd been stealing from for God knows how long. I never meant to find out. If Mom hadn't asked me to grab her laptop charger from her car last Tuesday, I'd still be the naive 19-year-old who thought her biggest problem was organic chemistry. But there it was, tucked behind the passenger seat, a lease agreement for 1247, Riverside Drive, Unit 4B. Monthly rent, $2,800. Our family's mortgage payment was barely $1,200. The address burned in my mind for 3 days before I drove there. The Riverside Towers wasn't some dingy apartment complex. Floor-to-ceiling windows, doorman, the works. I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic feeling like a stalker, watching the entrance until she appeared at 2:47 p.m. on Friday, my mom, Patricia Whitmore, PTA president and charity saint, sliding out of a brand-new silver Lexus I'd never seen before. She looked different. Younger. Her hair was styled in a way that probably cost more than my textbooks, and she wore a cream-colored coat that definitely wasn't from Target. This wasn't the woman who clipped coupons at our kitchen table, who told Dad last month we couldn't afford physical therapy for my little brother Jake's cerebral palsy. Jake. 8 years old, smart as hell, trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate. The Sunshine Children's Foundation had been covering his therapy sessions until September, when they suddenly cut their support program. Mom came home that day with tears in her eyes, explaining how the charity was facing budget shortfalls. She held Jake while he cried, promising we'd find another way. Except now I knew why their budget had shortfalls. My hand shook as I photographed the Lexus's license plate. The apartment building. The timestamps on my phone would prove she was here during her supposed volunteer hours at the foundation office. But I needed more than suspicious behavior. I needed proof. Getting into her laptop was easier than expected. She'd used Jake's birthday for her password, which made my stomach twist. Her browser history told the story: luxury furniture websites, high-end restaurants, a jewelry store called Meridian's where she'd apparently made several purchases totaling $8,400. All accessed during work hours at the charity office. But the real smoking gun was buried in her downloads folder. Bank statements for an account I'd never heard of, Riverside Community Credit Union. Deposits every 2 weeks, always on Thursdays, always $1,847.50. The amounts were too specific to be salary from her part-time job at the dental office. Too consistent to be anything legitimate. I cross-referenced the dates with the foundation's newsletter archives. Every deposit aligned perfectly with their fundraising events. The spring carnival. The summer swimathon. The back-to-school drive where parents donated hundreds of dollars thinking they were helping kids like Jake. 17 deposits over 8 months. Over $31,000. While Dad worked double shifts at the plant, while we ate generic cereal and delayed Jake's appointments, while I applied for every scholarship I could find because college was tight this year, my mother was playing house in a luxury apartment with stolen money. The gala invitation crinkled as my fist tightened around it. 3 weeks. That's how long I had to decide whether to destroy my family to save everyone else's. The worst part wasn't discovering the money. It was realizing how good she was at lying. I started paying attention to everything: her phone calls, her schedule, the way she'd pause before answering Dad's questions about her day. On Monday morning, I watched her kiss his forehead and promise to bring home his favorite Chinese takeout if the budget allowed it. 2 hours later, I followed her to Meridian's jewelry store on 5th Street. She spent 47 minutes inside. When she emerged, she was wearing new diamond earrings that caught the afternoon sunlight like tiny stars. By the time she got home at 6 p.m., they were gone, and she walked through our front door empty-handed, apologizing to Dad about the Chinese food being too expensive right now. I wanted to scream. Instead, I helped Jake with his math homework while Mom microwaved frozen fish sticks, playing the part of the struggling suburban mother so convincingly that even I almost believed it. The foundation's office was easier to infiltrate than I'd expected. Mom had gotten me volunteer hours there last summer. College applications look better with charity work, so the staff knew me. When I showed up Wednesday afternoon claiming I needed community service hours for a sociology project, Mrs. Chen at the front desk barely looked up from her computer. Just sign in, honey. You know where the filing room is. The filing room. Where Mom spent 3 hours every Tuesday and Thursday, supposedly updating donor records. The same room with the computer that had access to the foundation's main accounts. It took me 20 minutes to find what I was looking for. The deposit slips were meticulously organized in a folder labeled Weekly Reports P. Whitmore. Her handwriting documented every fundraising event, every check received, every cash donation counted. But the numbers didn't match the bank statements I'd seen on her laptop. The spring carnival had raised $4,127 in cash donations. Mom's report showed $3,200. The difference, $927. Almost exactly half of one of her bi-weekly deposits to that Riverside account. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, running late tonight. Can you help Jake with his exercises? Jake's exercises. The physical therapy routine we'd been managing at home since September because we couldn't afford professional sessions. I photographed every discrepancy I could find, my hand steady despite the rage building in my chest. 47 separate instances over 8 months. She wasn't just skimming, she was systematically stealing from every single fundraising event, every bake sale, every carnival game where parents handed over $5 bills thinking they were helping kids like their own. The door clicked behind me, and I spun around, shoving the files back into place. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. You've been in here a while, Sarah. Finding everything you need for your project? I forced a smile, praying she couldn't hear my heart hammering. Just getting familiar with the filing system. Mom always says organization is key. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. Your mother is a treasure. I don't know what we'd do without her. She's been such a godsend during our budget crisis. Budget crisis. The same crisis that had eliminated Jake's therapy program, cut the summer camp scholarships, and reduced the holiday toy drive by 60%. All while Patricia Whitmore played dress-up in her secret apartment, wearing diamonds bought with stolen lunch money. She really is special, I managed, the words tasting like poison. That night, I lay in bed listening to Jake's labored breathing through the thin wall between our rooms, calculating exactly how many therapy sessions $31,000 could have bought him. 207 sessions. Nearly 4 years of treatment. The gala was 19 days away. The security footage changed everything. I hadn't planned to ask Mrs. Chen about it, but when I returned to the foundation office Friday afternoon, she mentioned they'd finally gotten the camera system working in the main hallway. Insurance required it after that break-in last spring, she explained, pulling up the digital interface on her computer. Patricia helped me figure out how to access the recordings. Your mom's so good with technology. My stomach dropped. If there were cameras, there was evidence of Mom's real schedule. But more importantly, there was evidence of mine. The system keeps everything for 90 days, Mrs. Chen continued, clicking through folders. Want to see how it works? I nodded, trying to look casually interested while my mind raced. 90 days meant the footage would capture every discrepancy between Mom's reported volunteer hours and when she actually left the building. It also meant there was video of my unauthorized filing room visits. Mrs. Chen pulled up last Tuesday's footage, fast-forwarding to 2:30 p.m. See, there's your mom leaving after updating the donor files. On screen, Mom walked briskly toward the exit, a manila envelope tucked under her arm. The timestamp read 2:34 p.m. But I knew she'd been at the Riverside Towers apartment complex by 2:47 p.m. 13 minutes wasn't enough time to make that drive unless she'd gone straight there. No stops at the bank to make legitimate deposits. No detours to the post office to mail foundation business. Could I see last Thursday too? I asked, keeping my voice level. I'm tracking volunteer hour patterns for my sociology project. Mrs. Chen smiled and switched files. Thursday's footage showed Mom leaving at 1:15 p.m., nearly 2 hours before she was scheduled to finish. The envelope under her arm was thicker this time. Oh, that's odd, Mrs. Chen frowned. Patricia usually stays until 3 on Thursdays. Maybe she had an appointment. An appointment. Right. At Meridian's jewelry store, where she'd bought a tennis bracelet for $1,240 according to the credit card statement I'd photographed. Mrs. Chen, could I get copies of some of this footage? For my project documentation? She hesitated. I'm not sure about the privacy policies. Let me check with Patricia first. My blood turned to ice water. Actually, never mind. I don't want to bother her with school stuff. But Mrs. Chen was already reaching for her phone. Nonsense, she loves helping with your education. I watched in horror as she dialed Mom's cell number. This was falling apart. If Mom knew I was asking about security footage, she'd realize I was suspicious. She might destroy evidence, or worse, she might disappear entirely, leaving Dad and Jake with nothing. Hi Patricia, it's Helen. Sarah's here working on a college project about volunteer patterns, and she was hoping to get some security footage clips. Oh, you're at the dentist? I thought you said grocery shopping when you called earlier. My heart stopped. Mom was lying to Mrs. Chen about where she was, right now, while I sat 3 feet away listening to both sides of the conversation. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted slightly. Oh, I must have misheard. Anyway, about the footage. I could hear Mom's voice through the speaker, too bright, too fast. I don't think that's appropriate, Helen. Those files contain sensitive information about our donors and volunteers. But it's just timestamps and hallway footage. I'd rather discuss this in person Tuesday. Sarah, sweetheart, are you there? Mrs. Chen handed me the phone, and I took it with trembling fingers. Hi Mom. What exactly do you need this footage for, honey? The question sounded casual, but I caught the edge underneath. She knew. Somehow, she knew I was getting too close. Just tracking peak volunteer hours, I lied. Analyzing community engagement patterns. Sounds fascinating. We'll talk about it at home. The line went dead. 16 days until the gala, and my mother had just declared war. That evening, Mom was waiting in the kitchen when I got home from campus. She sat at our scratched wooden table with 2 cups of tea, her smile perfectly calibrated, warm enough to seem motherly, sharp enough to cut glass. Sit with me, Sarah. Let's talk about your sociology project. I slid into the chair across from her, accepting the steaming mug with hands I willed to stay steady. Earl Grey. My favorite. She remembered everything when she needed to. Mrs. Chen mentioned you've been spending a lot of time at the foundation lately. Mom's voice was casual, conversational. That's wonderful, honey. Community service looks great on graduate school applications. Just trying to get ahead, I replied, taking a sip that burned my tongue. Professor Martinez says original research makes essays more compelling. Original research. She repeated the phrase slowly, like she was tasting it. What kind of patterns are you hoping to find? The refrigerator hummed in the silence while I constructed my lie. Correlation between volunteer consistency and donation retention rates. Whether regular volunteers inspire more community giving. Mom nodded thoughtfully. Fascinating. And you need security footage for this because verifying self-reported volunteer hours against actual presence. People sometimes exaggerate their contributions without realizing it. Something flickered across her face, approval, maybe, or recognition. Like she was impressed despite herself. You know, Sarah, I've been thinking about your college expenses lately. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Financial aid only goes so far, and your father works so hard already. My stomach clenched. We're managing fine. Are we, though? Her thumb traced circles on my knuckles. I've been looking into some opportunities. Private scholarships, grant programs. There's one foundation in particular, they help students whose families face unexpected medical expenses. Jake. She was talking about Jake's therapy costs. I could put in a word, she continued. Write you a recommendation letter. These organizations value personal connections, and I've built quite a network through my volunteer work. The threat was elegant in its simplicity. Play along, keep quiet, and she'd help with college funding. Keep digging, and that help disappears, along with any chance of affording my degree. That's really generous, Mom. We take care of each other in this family. Her grip on my hand tightened slightly. Speaking of which, I think you should focus on your actual coursework instead of spending so much time at the foundation. Your organic chemistry grade has me worried. I was pulling a solid B in organic chemistry. She knew it, and I knew she knew it. You're probably right. School should come first. Good girl. She released my hand and stood, dumping her untouched tea into the sink. Oh, and Sarah? Mrs. Chen mentioned you seemed interested in the security system. Just so you know, they upgraded it last month. Motion sensors, facial recognition software, automatic timestamps for anyone entering or leaving the building. The casual delivery made it worse. She wasn't just warning me off, she was letting me know she could track my every visit, every minute I spent in that office. That sounds very thorough, I managed. The Foundation takes security seriously these days. Too many people trying to access information they shouldn't. She kissed the top of my head, the gesture achingly familiar. Sweet dreams, honey. I sat alone in the kitchen for another hour, staring at the dregs of my tea and counting the ways I'd just been outsmarted by my own mother. 15 days until the gala, and she'd effectively locked me out of the Foundation office while bribing me with college money I desperately needed. But she'd made one mistake. In trying to scare me away from the security footage, she'd confirmed it contained something worth hiding. I just had to find another way to get it. The answer came from an unexpected source, Jake. I was helping him with his physical therapy exercises Saturday morning when he mentioned seeing Mom on TV at the Foundation's office. She was on the computer in Mrs. Chen's office, he said, struggling to lift his left leg against my gentle resistance. I saw her through the window when Dad drove me to my doctor appointment Thursday. The same day the security footage showed Mom leaving at 1:15 p.m. with that thick envelope. Are you sure it was Mom? Yeah, she was wearing her blue sweater. The one with the buttons. Jake's face scrunched with concentration as he worked his ankle rotations. But she looked different. Meaner. My 8-year-old brother had somehow captured what I'd been struggling to articulate. There was something predatory about Mom's expression in those moments when she thought no one was watching. Jake, what time was your appointment? 3 o'clock. We were early, so Dad let me look at the fish tank in the lobby across from the Foundation building. His words came in huffs between exercises. Mom was there for a long time. She kept typing and looking around like she was hiding something. Mrs. Chen's computer. The same one she'd used to show me the security footage interface. If Mom had access to that system, she could delete evidence, alter timestamps, or worse, she could see exactly when I'd been in the building and what I'd been looking at. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. Sarah, I reviewed the Foundation's privacy policies and won't be able to share security footage for your project. Patricia helped me understand the liability issues. Hope you can find another research approach. Mom had gotten to her. Whatever story she'd told Mrs. Chen had effectively cut off my access to the video evidence I needed. But Jake's observation sparked a new idea. If Mom was using Mrs. Chen's computer to manipulate the security system, she might have left other digital footprints. Email correspondence about the budget crisis. Communications with board members about program cuts. Evidence that would damn her even without the footage. I waited until Sunday afternoon when Mom left for her supposed grocery shopping trip, which I now knew was probably another visit to the Riverside apartment. Dad was watching football with Jake, their usual weekend routine since Jake had gotten too weak for playground visits. Mom's laptop password was still Jake's birthday. Her email account opened easily, revealing months of correspondence that made my chest tight with rage. The board meeting minutes from September were devastating. Board member Robert Fitzgerald had questioned the dramatic drop in available funds, noting that fundraising events had been more successful than ever. Mom's response was masterful, a detailed email explaining how rising administrative costs and new compliance requirements had eaten into their program budgets. We're doing everything we can to maximize direct aid to families, she'd written. Perhaps we need to set more aggressive fundraising goals for the upcoming gala to restore full programming. The upcoming gala. Where she'd stand at that podium asking for more money to steal while Jake struggled with exercises he should have been doing with a professional therapist. But the real bombshell was buried in a thread from October 15th. Board member Linda Morrison had suggested conducting an external audit of the Foundation's finances, concerned about the sustainability of their current budget model. Mom's response had been swift and decisive. I appreciate Linda's diligence, but external audits are expensive and time-consuming. As volunteer coordinator, I can assure the board that I personally reviewed all donation processing and found our current systems adequate. Perhaps we should focus our resources on serving children rather than paying accounting firms. The thread ended there. No further discussion of audits. No follow-up from Linda Morrison. I scrolled through Mom's sent folder, looking for any private correspondence with Linda. There it was, a meeting invitation sent 3 days after Linda's audit suggestion. Coffee Tuesday 10 a.m., discussion of Foundation priorities. No record of Linda's response. But the next board meeting minutes showed a notable absence. Linda Morrison excused absence, personal commitments. Linda Morrison hadn't appeared in any subsequent board communications. My hands were shaking as I searched deeper into Mom's email history. Linda Morrison's name appeared 17 more times over the past 2 months, but only in group messages. Never responding, never contributing to discussions, never attending meetings. What had Mom said to her during that coffee meeting? What kind of pressure had she applied to silence the one board member asking the right questions? The front door slammed downstairs. Mom was back early. I cleared the browser history, closed the laptop, and sprinted to my room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through my window, I watched her unload grocery bags from the trunk of her regular car, the 15-year-old Honda she drove when maintaining her struggling suburban mother persona. But I'd seen enough. Mom wasn't just stealing money, she was actively silencing anyone who might discover her crimes. Linda Morrison had been neutralized somehow, Mrs. Chen had been manipulated into compliance, and now Mom was working to corner me with threats and bribes. 13 days until the gala. I needed Linda Morrison's phone number, and I needed to find out what my mother had done to buy her silence. Because if Mom was willing to destroy board members who asked too many questions, what would she do to her own daughter? Linda Morrison lived in a Tudor-style house on Maple Street, 20 minutes from campus. I found her address through the Foundation's old newsletter archives. She'd hosted a fundraising tea party there last spring, back when she was still actively involved. The newsletter photo showed her smiling beside a dessert table, holding one of Jake's crayon drawings that had been auctioned for $50. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, rehearsing what I'd say. Hi, Mrs. Morrison. I'm Patricia Whitmore's daughter, and I think my mother threatened you into silence about financial irregularities. Yeah, that would go over well. Finally, I walked up the brick pathway and rang the doorbell. A woman in her 60s answered, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked exactly like her newsletter photo, except her smile had been replaced by wariness. Mrs. Morrison? I'm Sarah Whitmore. Patricia's daughter? Her expression shifted immediately, surprise, then something that looked like fear. She glanced past me toward the street, checking if I was alone. Sarah. My goodness, you've grown up. Her voice was careful, measured. What brings you by? I was hoping to ask you about the Sunshine Children's Foundation. I'm doing research for a college project. The lie came easily now, but Linda Morrison's reaction told me everything. Her knuckles went white where she gripped the doorframe. I'm not involved with the foundation anymore. You should speak with your mother. She started to close the door, but I stepped forward. Mrs. Morrison, please. I know something happened at your coffee meeting with her in October. The door stopped moving. Linda stared at me for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. You should go home, Sarah. My brother Jake was getting therapy through the foundation until September. They cut the program because of budget shortfalls. My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. I just want to understand why the money isn't reaching kids who need it. Linda's resolve wavered. She looked up and down the street again, then stepped back from the door. Come inside. Quickly. Her living room was warmly decorated with family photos and handmade quilts, the kind of space that should have felt comforting. Instead, the drawn curtains and Linda's nervous energy made it feel like a bunker. Your mother is a very persuasive woman, Linda said, settling into an armchair across from me. Very thorough in her research. What kind of research? Linda's laugh was bitter. The kind that involves private investigators and carefully worded implications about what happens to people who make false accusations. My stomach dropped. She threatened you? Not directly. Never directly. Patricia is far too smart for that. Linda stood and walked to the window, peering through the curtains. She simply presented me with a folder containing photographs of my grandson entering a rehabilitation clinic in Denver. Medical records showing his struggles with addiction. Police reports from his arrest last year. The words hit me like physical blows. Mom had weaponized this woman's private family pain. She explained how unfortunate it would be if this information somehow became public during my grandson's recovery. How damaging it could be to his progress, his job prospects, his relationship with his children. Linda's voice was steady, but her hands shook. She was so sympathetic about it. So understanding of how desperate families become when addiction is involved. That's blackmail. That's your mother. Linda turned back to face me, her eyes hollow. She also mentioned how easy it would be to plant evidence suggesting that any financial discrepancies at the foundation were actually my responsibility. How a desperate grandmother might skim money to pay for expensive private treatment facilities. The calculated cruelty took my breath away. Mom hadn't just silenced Linda, she created a perfect scapegoat if anyone ever questioned the missing funds. Do you have proof of any of this? Linda shook her head. She kept the folder. Said it would stay private as long as I remained focused on my family instead of foundation business. She sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of her 60-something years. I've been terrified for months that she'd change her mind. Mrs. Morrison, I think I can help. But I need you to trust me. She studied my face for a long moment. You look like her, you know. Especially around the eyes. How do I know this isn't another one of Patricia's tests? The question was fair. If I were her, I wouldn't trust Patricia Whitmore's daughter either. Because in 12 days, she's going to stand up at the foundation gala and ask for more money while my little brother does physical therapy exercises on our living room floor. My voice broke on the last words. And I can't let that happen. Linda Morrison stared at me for another long moment, then walked to an antique desk in the corner. She pulled out a small digital camera. I photographed every page in that folder before she took it back, she said quietly. Insurance, in case she ever tried to use it against my family. She handed me the camera, and I scrolled through the images with growing horror. Mom's research had been exhaustive, medical records, financial statements, employment history, even photos of Linda's grandson's children. Everything needed to destroy a family completely. Sarah, Linda said softly, whatever you're planning to do, be very careful. Your mother doesn't just steal money. She destroys people who get in her way. I looked up from the camera, meeting her frightened eyes. Then it's time someone got in her way who she can't destroy. But even as I said it, I wondered if I was wrong. If Mom could do this to Linda Morrison, a respected community member with no real connection to her crimes, what would she do to the daughter who could send her to prison? 11 days until the gala, and I was running out of time to find out. The photographs from Linda's camera were worse than I'd imagined. Mom hadn't just gathered blackmail material, she'd created a complete dossier designed to frame Linda for the thefts. Bank statements showing unusual cash deposits that I now realized were probably fabricated. Credit card receipts for luxury purchases that matched Mom's own shopping habits. Even a forged email trail suggesting Linda had been pressuring Mrs. Chin for after-hours access to the foundation's accounts. I sat in my car outside Linda's house, scrolling through image after image of manufactured evidence. If anyone ever questioned the missing funds, Mom could produce this folder and destroy Linda Morrison's life while positioning herself as the whistleblower who'd uncovered the real thief. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, your mom's working late at the foundation tonight. Can you pick up Jake from aftercare? My shift ends at 9. Working late. Right. I checked the time, 6:47 p.m. If I drove to the Riverside Towers now, I'd probably catch her leaving the apartment dressed for whatever dinner plans she'd made with stolen money. Instead, I made a different choice. I drove to the foundation office. Mrs. Chen's car was gone from the parking lot, which meant Mom shouldn't have legitimate access to the building. But there it was, her Honda Civic parked in the back corner, tucked between a dumpster and a maintenance shed where it wouldn't be visible from the street. I waited 20 minutes before she emerged from the rear entrance, carrying 2 manila envelopes and checking her phone. She looked around carefully before walking to her car, and even from 50 yards away, I could see the tension in her shoulders. She wasn't just stealing anymore. She was actively managing her crimes, probably destroying evidence or creating more false documentation. The woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me to always tell the truth, was systematically dismantling any paper trail that could lead back to her. The rear entrance door was still propped open. Mom must have disabled the automatic lock. I slipped inside, my heart hammering as I navigated the dark hallway toward Mrs. Chen's office. The computer was still logged in, multiple windows open across the screen. Email drafts. Mom had been composing messages from Mrs. Chen's account to various board members, all dated for next week. Each one contained subtle suggestions about Linda Morrison's suspicious behavior during her final months on the board. References to her unusual interest in financial records. Implications that someone should take a closer look at donation processing from events Linda had supervised. She was laying groundwork. If my investigation got too close, or if anyone else started asking questions, Mom could send these emails and redirect suspicion toward Linda. The perfect crime with a perfect patsy. But Mom had made one crucial mistake. The browser history showed she'd accessed the Foundation's main bank account portal at 7:23 p.m. I screenshotted the login timestamp, then clicked through to the account summary. The current balance was $127,493. According to the most recent newsletter, they'd raised $89,000 at the fall carnival last month. Basic math meant they should have had closer to $180,000 available, even accounting for normal operating expenses. I photographed the account statements, transaction histories, and every piece of evidence I could find. My hands were shaking so badly that half the photos came out blurred, but I kept shooting. 10 days until the gala, and I finally had proof that the money was missing from the Foundation's primary accounts. The front door chimed in the distance. Someone was entering the building. I closed the browser windows, grabbed my phone, and dove under Mrs. Chen's desk just as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy boots. Definitely not Mom returning. Patricia? You still here? A man's voice, unfamiliar. Back office, Mom called from somewhere deeper in the building. Almost finished. The footsteps moved away from me, toward Mom's voice. I crawled out from under the desk and crept to the office doorway, straining to hear their conversation. Review the documentation you prepared, the man was saying. Very thorough. This should be more than enough to satisfy any questions. Good. Mom's voice was crisp, professional. The timing needs to be perfect. Right after the gala, when emotions are running high about the children's programs. And you're certain about the target? Linda Morrison made her choice when she questioned our financial management. Some people don't understand that charity work requires difficult decisions. My blood turned to ice. They weren't just talking about framing Linda, they were planning to actively destroy her life after the gala, using her as a distraction while Mom disappeared with whatever final score she was planning. What about the audit trail? Handled. By the time anyone traces the discrepancies, all evidence will point directly to her. I've been very careful about documentation. The footsteps were moving again, back toward the front of the building. I had maybe 30 seconds to get out of there before they walked past Mrs. Chen's office. I slipped into the hallway, staying low, and made it to the rear exit just as their voices grew louder near the front entrance. My Honda started on the second try, and I drove home with my hands gripping the wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. Mom had an accomplice. Someone helping her manufacture evidence against Linda Morrison. Someone who knew about the missing money and was actively participating in the cover-up. 9 days until the gala, and the conspiracy was bigger than I'd imagined. Jake was having a bad night when I got home. I found him on the living room floor, tears streaming down his face as he struggled through his therapy exercises alone. Dad's work boots sat by the door. He'd made it home early but had fallen asleep on the couch, still in his uniform. Sarah, Jake whispered, my leg won't work right. It keeps cramping up. I knelt beside him, gently massaging his calf muscle the way his old physical therapist had shown us. The muscle was tight, probably from overexertion. If he'd still been getting professional therapy, they would have caught this before it became painful. Better? I asked after a few minutes. He nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. Mom said we might be able to afford therapy again after Christmas. Do you think that's true? I looked at my little brother, 8 years old, fighting his body's limitations every single day while trusting that the adults in his life were doing everything possible to help him. The lie Mom had told him made my chest burn with rage. I think things are going to change soon, I said carefully. But Jake, can I ask you something? That day you saw Mom at the Foundation office, are you sure about the time? Yeah. Dad's appointment card said 3 o'clock, and we got there early to see the fish. His eyes brightened slightly. There was this huge angelfish that kept swimming in circles. And Mom looked upset? Jake's expression grew thoughtful. Not upset exactly. More like, you know when you're trying to beat a hard video game level and you're really focused? Like that, but meaner. Focused but mean. That crystallized something I'd been struggling to understand about Mom's behavior. She wasn't just stealing impulsively, she was methodically planning each move, treating the destruction of people's lives like a strategic game. Jake, if someone was doing something bad and you could stop them, but it might hurt people you love, what would you do? He considered this seriously, the way he approached all difficult questions. I guess I'd try to stop them without hurting the good people. But if I couldn't? He shrugged. You have to stop bad things, even if it's hard. 8 years old, and my brother had more moral clarity than I'd managed in weeks of agonizing over this decision. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, working very late tonight. Don't wait up. Emergency board meeting about gala preparations. Emergency board meeting. At 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday night. While she was actually meeting with whoever had been helping her frame Linda Morrison. I tucked Jake into bed, then sat at my desk with my laptop, pulling up everything I'd photographed and documented over the past 2 weeks. Bank statements showing $31,000 in stolen funds. Security footage timestamps proving Mom's lies about her schedule. Linda Morrison's camera full of blackmail material. Screenshots of the fake email drafts designed to frame an innocent woman. But I was still missing one crucial piece, the identity of Mom's accomplice. I opened a new browser window and searched for the Foundation's board of directors. 7 members total, including Linda Morrison before she'd been silenced. I cross-referenced their names with Mom's email contacts, looking for anyone she'd been communicating with privately. Robert Fitzgerald appeared frequently, the same board member who'd questioned the budget shortfalls back in September. But his emails with Mom were all professional, focused on legitimate foundation business. No suspicious timing, no coded language. Then I found it, buried in Mom's deleted items folder, a message thread with someone named Michael Torres. The name didn't appear on any foundation documentation, but the conversation timestamps matched perfectly with her late-night emergency meetings. Package ready for delivery after next week's event, Mom had written 3 days ago. Cleanup should be complete within 48 hours. Michael's response was equally cryptic, client understands the timeline. Documentation is bulletproof. She won't know what hit her. They weren't just planning to frame Linda Morrison. They were planning to do it immediately after the gala, when Mom would have access to whatever final theft she was orchestrating. The timing made perfect sense, use the gala as cover for one last major score, then disappear while Linda Morrison took the fall for everything. But who was Michael Torres? I searched his name combined with various terms, private investigator, accountant, lawyer. Nothing relevant came up until I tried Michael Torres Linda Morrison Denver. The first result made my hands go numb. Michael Torres was a private investigator specializing in discrete background research and asset recovery services. His website featured testimonials about helping clients resolve sensitive family matters and protect their interests during difficult situations. He was the one who'd gathered all that blackmail material on Linda's grandson. Mom hadn't just stumbled across that information, she'd hired a professional to dig it up and weaponize it. 8 days until the gala. My mother wasn't just a thief. She was the head of a criminal conspiracy that destroyed innocent families for money. And tomorrow morning, she'd come downstairs and make Jake breakfast while pretending to be the loving mother who'd do anything to help her disabled son. I closed my laptop and stared out my bedroom window at the quiet suburban street where I'd grown up believing that people were fundamentally good, that families protected each other, that mothers sacrificed for their children instead of sacrificing their children for money. Time was running out, and I still didn't know if I was brave enough to destroy the only family Jake had ever known. Even if that family was built on lies. The plan came to me at 2 a.m. while listening to Jake's labored breathing through the wall. I couldn't get into the foundation office anymore, Mom had made sure of that. But I didn't need to break in if someone invited me. I waited until Monday morning, when Mom left for her volunteer shift, then called Mrs. Chen from my dorm room between classes. Hi Mrs. Chen, it's Sarah Whitmore. I was wondering if you could help me with something for my mom's surprise birthday party next month. The lie rolled off my tongue easily now. I wanted to put together a photo montage of all her volunteer work, and I was hoping you might have some pictures from foundation events she's helped with. Mrs. Chen's voice brightened immediately. Oh, what a lovely idea. Patricia has been such a treasure. I'm sure I have dozens of photos in our event files. Would it be possible for me to stop by Wednesday afternoon and look through them? I want to surprise her, so I'd prefer she not know about it. Of course, dear. Patricia volunteers Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, so Wednesday would be perfect. I'll pull together everything we have. Wednesday. That gave me 2 days to prepare for what might be my last chance to gather evidence before the gala. But first, I needed to test a theory that had been nagging at me since discovering Michael Torres' involvement. I spent my lunch break at the campus library, using their computers to search property records for 1247, Riverside Drive, Unit 4B. The lease I'd found in Mom's car had been signed by Patricia Whitmore, but property ownership was often more complicated than rental agreements. 20 minutes of digging through county records gave me the answer I'd been dreading. Unit 4B was owned by Torres Consulting LLC, the same company name listed on Michael Torres' private investigator website. Mom wasn't just renting a secret apartment. She was living in property owned by her criminal accomplice, probably paying rent with stolen charity money while he provided her with blackmail services in return. The relationship was deeper than I'd realized, a full partnership built on systematic fraud and intimidation. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Jake's teacher called. He fell asleep during math class again. Can you pick him up early? I'm stuck at the plant until 7. I closed the browser windows and drove to Jake's elementary school, my mind racing through implications. If Mom and Torres were true partners, they'd have backup plans for everything. Evidence caches. Exit strategies. Ways to disappear if their scheme started unraveling. Jake was waiting in the nurse's office when I arrived, looking smaller than usual in the plastic chair. His teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, pulled me aside in the hallway. Sarah, I'm concerned about Jake's energy levels lately. He's been falling asleep during lessons, and his handwriting is getting shakier. Has anything changed at home? I looked through the doorway at my little brother, who was struggling to stay awake even now. The missed physical therapy sessions weren't just affecting his mobility, they were impacting his overall health. We're working on it, I managed. His therapy schedule got disrupted, but we're hoping to resolve that soon. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. The school district has some resources available if your family needs assistance with medical expenses. Sometimes families don't realize what help is available. Help that was available while Mom spent stolen money on diamond earrings and luxury apartments. Thank you. I'll look into that. During the drive home, Jake fell asleep in his booster seat, his head tilted at an angle that would give him a crick in his neck. 6 days until the gala, and my brother was literally falling apart while Mom planned her final theft. That evening, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to record my confrontation with Mom about the missing money. Not for evidence, I already had enough proof to bury her. But because I needed to hear her try to justify what she'd done to Jake, to Linda Morrison, to every family whose donations never reached their children. I needed to understand how someone becomes capable of that level of betrayal. And maybe, if I was very lucky, she'd reveal something about her endgame that would help me stop her before she disappeared forever. I waited until Tuesday evening to set up the recording equipment. Dad was working another double shift, and Mom had texted that she'd be late finishing donor thank you letters at the foundation. Jake was asleep by 8, exhausted from another day of struggling through exercises his body wasn't strong enough to handle alone. The voice recorder app on my phone could run for hours without detection. I tested it 3 times, making sure the audio quality would pick up conversations from across our kitchen table. Then I sat down to wait, rehearsing the confrontation that would either save my family or destroy it completely. Mom came home at 10:47 p.m., and I knew immediately that something had changed. She moved differently, lighter, almost giddy. Like someone who'd just won a lottery they'd been raking for months. Sarah? What are you doing up so late, honey? I looked up from my organic chemistry textbook, which I'd been pretending to read for the past hour. Studying for midterms. How were the thank you letters? Oh, you know how it is. Gratitude takes time to express properly. She dropped her purse on the counter and pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. The foundation received some wonderful news today, actually. A major donation came through, enough to restore several programs we thought we'd lost. The lie came so smoothly that I almost admired her technique. Eye contact, specific details, even managed to inject appropriate emotion into her voice. That's incredible. Does that mean Jake might be able to get therapy again? Mom's fingers paused over her phone screen for just a fraction of a second. We'll see what the board decides about fund allocation. These things take time. More time. Always more time, while Jake got weaker and other families went without help. I reached under the table and started the recording app. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Remember when you taught me about the difference between right and wrong? You used to say that good people sometimes have to make hard choices, but they never deliberately hurt innocent people. She set down her phone, giving me her full attention. Something flickered in her expression, wariness, maybe, or calculation. That's still true. Why do you ask? I've been thinking about Linda Morrison leaving the foundation board so suddenly. It seemed strange that someone so passionate about helping kids would just walk away. Mom's smile didn't waver, but her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Straighter spine, hands flat on the counter. Ready for battle. Linda had family obligations that required her attention. Sometimes people have to step back from volunteer work when life gets complicated. Family obligations involving her grandson's addiction treatment in Denver? The kitchen went completely silent except for the hum of our ancient refrigerator. Mom stared at me for a long moment, and I watched her face cycle through surprise, calculation, and something that looked almost like pride. That's very specific information, Sarah. So is $31,000 in missing charity funds. So is apartment 4B at Riverside Towers. So is Michael Torres and his background research services. Mom pulled out a chair and sat down across from me with deliberate calm, like we were discussing my college schedule instead of her criminal conspiracy. You've been busy, she said finally. Not as busy as you. Though I have to admit, the blackmail angle was impressive. I wouldn't have thought of manufacturing evidence to frame the one person asking the right questions. Frame is such an ugly word. Mom's voice remained perfectly level. Linda Morrison made a choice to prioritize her family's privacy over her civic duties. I simply helped her understand the consequences of different decisions. The casual way she described destroying an innocent woman's life made my stomach turn. But I kept my voice steady, knowing the recording was capturing every word. And Jake? What choice did he make to deserve losing his therapy? For the first time, something genuine crossed Mom's face. Not guilt, something harder, more defensive. Everything I've done has been for this family's future. Whose future? Because Jake's getting worse every day. Jake will be fine. Children are resilient. The dismissal was so cold, so calculated, that I finally understood the truth I'd been avoiding. My mother was willing to sacrifice her disabled son's health to maintain her criminal lifestyle. For days until the gala, and I was sitting across from a stranger who wore my mother's face. The silence stretched between us until Mom finally spoke, her voice taking on the patient tone she used to use when explaining why I couldn't have a sleepover on a school night. Sarah, you're 19 years old. You think you understand how the world works, but you don't. She folded her hands on the table like she was conducting a business meeting. Do you know what your father makes at the plant? $38,000 a year. Do you know what Jake's medical expenses would cost over his lifetime? Conservative estimate? $700,000. I kept my expression neutral, but my finger found the recording app to make sure it was still running. So your solution was to steal from other disabled kids? My solution was to secure our family's future while helping as many children as possible along the way. She leaned forward slightly. The foundation raises nearly $200,000 annually. I've taken 15% over 8 months. The remaining 85% has still helped dozens of families. The math was sickeningly logical. In her mind, she was some kind of Robin Hood, stealing from the charity to help her own family while leaving most of the money for everyone else. What about Linda Morrison? What percentage of her life was acceptable collateral damage? Mom's jaw tightened. Linda Morrison could have quietly stepped aside when I explained the situation. Instead, she chose to create problems that would have hurt everyone, including Jake. Sometimes protecting your family means making decisions other people won't understand. And Michael Torres? Where does he fit into protecting our family? This time, her pause was longer. I watched her recalculate whatever story she'd prepared, realizing I knew more than she'd anticipated. Michael is a consultant who helps families navigate difficult situations. His services aren't cheap, but they're necessary. Services like digging up blackmail material on grandmothers trying to help sick children? Sarah. Her voice sharpened, the first crack in her composed facade. You're playing with things you don't understand. There are people involved in this situation who won't appreciate your amateur detective work. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I thought about Michael Torres, professional investigator with clients who needed people silenced. How far would they go to protect their operation? Is that why you're planning to frame Linda completely after the gala? Because I've become too much of a liability? Mom's eyes went cold in a way I'd never seen before. Who have you told about this? Does it matter? It matters because you're my daughter, and I'd prefer to handle this as a family issue rather than a business problem. Family issue versus business problem. The distinction sent ice through my veins, but I forced myself to keep pushing. Handle it how? The same way you handled Linda's audit concerns? I gave Linda a choice. She made the smart one. Mom pulled out her phone and typed a quick message before looking back at me. I'm prepared to offer you the same courtesy. My heart hammered as I watched her hit send on whatever message she just composed. Was she texting Michael Torres? Alerting him that their operation had been compromised? What kind of choice? The foundation gala is in 4 days. After Saturday night, this situation resolves itself permanently. You can either be part of the solution, or you can create complications that hurt everyone you claim to care about. The recording app showed 12 minutes of conversation. 12 minutes of my mother casually discussing blackmail, theft, and whatever permanent resolution she had planned for Saturday. And if I choose to create complications? Mom's smile was colder than anything I'd ever seen from her. Then you'll discover that being my daughter provides less protection than you might hope. She stood up from the table, checking her phone as another message came through. I suggest you think very carefully about your next moves, Sarah. Some mistakes can't be undone. I sat alone in the kitchen for another hour after she went upstairs, staring at the recording app and trying to process what had just happened. My mother hadn't just confessed to her crimes, she threatened me. Her own daughter. 3 days until the gala, and I was running out of time to stop whatever permanent resolution she was planning. But now I finally understood what I was really fighting against, not just a thief, but someone willing to destroy anyone who threatened her operation. Including me. The next morning brought a text that changed everything. Sarah, this is Linda Morrison. Can you meet me today? Something's happened with my grandson. I think your mother knows you came to see me. I stared at my phone screen in my dorm room, my hands shaking as I typed back, are you safe? Where do you want to meet? Public place only. Riverside Mall Food Court, 2 p.m. Come alone and make sure nobody follows you. 3 hours until the meeting, and my mind raced through possibilities. Had Mom figured out that Linda was my source? Had Michael Torres been watching Linda's house? The timing felt too coincidental, less than 12 hours after my confrontation with Mom, and suddenly Linda's grandson was in some kind of trouble. I skipped my afternoon classes and drove to the mall early, parking on the opposite side from the main entrance and walking through Macy's to reach the food court. Linda was already there, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall, clutching a coffee cup like it was an anchor. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. They arrested David, she said without preamble as I sat down. My grandson. At 6 a.m. this morning, Denver police found drugs planted in his car during a routine traffic stop. The words hit me like a physical blow. Planted? David's been clean for 8 months. He doesn't even drink coffee anymore because caffeine triggers his anxiety. Linda's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white. The officer who stopped him said they received an anonymous tip about suspicious behavior. I thought about Mom's phone messages last night, the quick text she'd sent during our confrontation. What kind of drugs? Enough cocaine to qualify as distribution charges. His lawyer says he's looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. Linda's composure finally cracked. He has 2 little girls, Sarah. They're 8 and 10 years old. 8 years old. The same age as Jake. I closed my eyes, picturing some innocent kid losing her father because my mother needed to send a message about what happened to people who crossed her. There's more, Linda continued. This morning I received a package containing new photographs. David's children at their school. Timestamps from yesterday showing someone had been watching them, following their routine. The systematic cruelty was breathtaking. Mom and Michael Torres hadn't just framed David, they demonstrated they could reach Linda's great-granddaughters whenever they wanted. Linda, we have to go to the police. This is interstate criminal conspiracy. She laughed bitterly. With what proof? An anonymous tip led to legitimate drug charges. The photographs could have been taken by any private investigator hired for any reason. Your mother is very careful about evidence trails. I have recordings of her admitting to the thefts. Bank statements showing the missing money. And who's going to believe she confessed to her own daughter? Who's going to trust evidence gathered by someone with every reason to lie? Linda shook her head. She's thought this through, Sarah. Every angle. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. Hope you're having a productive day at school. Remember our conversation last night. Some decisions can't be undone. Love you, sweetheart. The casual tone made my skin crawl. She knew exactly where I was and who I was talking to. Linda saw my expression and leaned forward. She's not going to stop with my family. Whatever you're planning for Saturday night, she's already planning countermoves. Then what do you suggest? Run. Linda's voice was flat, matter of fact. Take Jake and your father and disappear before Saturday. Because whatever Patricia has planned for that gala, it's bigger than just stealing money. I thought about Jake's physical therapy needs, Dad's job at the plant, my college tuition. Everything that tied us to this town, this life that Mom had been systematically poisoning. I can't run. Jake needs stability, medical care. And Dad would never believe me without proof. Then you better pray your proof is good enough to survive what's coming. Linda stood up, leaving her untouched coffee on the table. Because after what she did to David, I'm scared to find out what she'll do to you. 2 days until the gala, and my mother had just demonstrated that she could destroy anyone, anywhere, anytime she chose. The question wasn't whether I could stop her anymore. The question was whether I could survive trying. That evening, I sat in my car outside the foundation office watching Mom's Honda through binoculars I borrowed from Dad's hunting gear. She'd been inside for 47 minutes, longer than any legitimate volunteer work would require. The parking lot was empty except for her car and a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. My phone rang, making me jump. Mrs. Chen's name appeared on the screen. Sarah? I'm so sorry to call so late, but there's been a break-in at the foundation office. The police are here, and they're asking about anyone who might have had after-hours access. My blood turned to ice. A break-in? When? They think sometime this afternoon. The filing cabinets were ransacked, and the computer system was damaged. Very strange though, nothing valuable was taken. Just papers scattered everywhere. I stared at Mom's car, still parked 50 yards away. Mrs. Chen, is my mother there helping with the investigation? Your mother? No, dear. Patricia's been at a dental conference in Springfield since this morning. She won't be back until tomorrow evening. The lie was so smooth, so automatic. Even while orchestrating a fake break-in, Mom had provided Mrs. Chen with a perfect alibi. Sarah? Are you still there? Yes, sorry. The connection cut out for a second. I forced my voice to stay level. Did they say what kind of papers were scattered? Mostly donor files and financial records. The police think someone was looking for specific information. Mrs. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. Between you and me, I'm worried this might be connected to our budget problems. Someone desperate enough to break in looking for evidence of irregularities. Evidence of irregularities. Mom was manufacturing a crime scene that would support her narrative about Linda Morrison. When investigators found the planted evidence tomorrow, it would look like Linda had broken in to destroy proof of her own theft. Mrs. Chen, you should ask the police to dust for fingerprints on the filing cabinets. Especially the donor files from the spring carnival and summer swimathon events. That's very specific, dear. Why those particular events? Because those were the events where Mom's theft had been most systematic. And I was willing to bet she'd made sure Linda's fingerprints were on those files from her time as an active board member. Just a feeling. Those were our biggest fundraising events this year. After Mrs. Chen hung up, I watched the foundation office for another 20 minutes. Finally, the rear door opened and Mom emerged with Michael Torres, a lean man in his 50s wearing latex gloves and carrying a black duffel bag. They spoke briefly beside the silver Mercedes before he drove away. Mom waited another 10 minutes before getting in her Honda and leaving in the opposite direction. Standard criminal protocol, never leave a crime scene together, establish separate alibis, make sure no one could connect them to the same location. But I had connected them. And tomorrow, when the police discovered evidence implicating Linda Morrison in both the thefts and the break-in, I'd have photographic proof that Mom and Torres had been at the scene hours earlier. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop following people who don't want to be followed. Some hobbies are dangerous for college students. Torres. Somehow he'd spotted me despite my precautions. I looked around the empty parking lot, suddenly aware of how isolated I was. How easy it would be for someone to approach my car without being seen. I drove home with my hands shaking, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. One day until the gala, and Mom's accomplice was now directly threatening me. But I had what I needed. Photos of them staging the break-in. Recordings of Mom's confession. Bank statements showing the stolen money. Tomorrow night, in front of 300 community members, I was going to end Patricia Whitmore's criminal career forever. Assuming I survived that long. The morning of the gala, I woke up to find Jake collapsed on the bathroom floor. He was conscious but couldn't get his legs to support his weight, his left side trembling uncontrollably. Dad was already gone for his Saturday shift, and Mom was supposedly at the hotel, coordinating final preparations for tonight's event. Sarah, Jake whispered, tears streaming down his face, I can't make my body work right. I called 911, my hands shaking as I explained Jake's symptoms to the dispatcher. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, and I rode with Jake to St. Mary's Hospital while texting Dad frantically. The emergency room doctor, Dr. Martinez, ran a series of neurological tests that took 2 hours. His muscle deterioration has accelerated significantly, she explained to me and Dad, who'd rushed from the plant still wearing his work uniform. Without consistent physical therapy, children with Jake's condition can experience rapid decline. The good news is it's reversible with proper treatment, but we need to start immediately. How much will that cost? Dad asked, his voice hollow. With insurance, you're looking at about $400 per week for the intensive therapy he needs. I watched my father's face crumble. $400 a week was more than our grocery budget. More than our utilities combined. Money we didn't have because Mom had been stealing it from the very program designed to help families like ours. We'll figure it out, Dad said, squeezing Jake's hand. Whatever it takes. But I knew we wouldn't figure it out. Not unless I exposed Mom tonight and forced the foundation to restore Jake's therapy funding with the money she'd stolen. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, heard about Jake from the hospital notification system. So sorry I can't be there, gala setup is in crisis mode. We'll visit tomorrow when things calm down. Give him my love. The casual dismissal of her son's medical emergency made my stomach burn. Even now, hours before her final theft, she couldn't break character long enough to pretend she cared about Jake's deteriorating condition. Dad stayed with Jake while I went home to get his favorite stuffed animal, a ratty elephant named Peanut that he'd had since he was 3. The house felt different somehow, charged with the electricity of an approaching storm. In my room, I gathered the evidence I'd collected over the past 3 weeks, printed bank statements, photos of the staged break-in, Linda Morrison's camera full of blackmail material, and my phone with its recording of Mom's confession. Everything fit into a manila envelope that I sealed and labeled Board of Directors Urgent. Tonight, while Mom stood at the podium accepting praise for her dedication to children in need, I'd be handing this envelope to Robert Fitzgerald, the board member who'd first questioned the budget shortfalls. But first, I had one final piece of evidence to collect. Mrs. Chen had called earlier to say that despite last night's break-in, the gala would proceed as planned. The police investigation was ongoing, but they'd cleared the building for tonight's event. What she didn't know was that I'd arranged to meet her at 4 p.m. to help with last-minute preparations. The foundation office was bustling with catering staff and decorators when I arrived. Mrs. Chen looked frazzled, coordinating table arrangements while trying to manage the disruption from the previous night's burglary. Sarah, thank goodness you're here. Could you help me verify the donor recognition list? I want to make sure we didn't lose anything important in the break-in. Perfect. I followed her to the computer terminal, the same one Mom had used to access the bank accounts and draft those fake emails about Linda Morrison. If the police had processed the scene properly, they might have missed the browser history I'd photographed 2 nights ago. While Mrs. Chen pulled up the donor database, I casually opened a second browser window and navigated to the foundation's bank portal. The login screen appeared, and I noticed something that made my pulse quicken. The remember password box was still checked for Patricia Whitmore's access credentials. Mrs. Chen, I'll be right back, just need to use the restroom. I slipped away and found Detective Williams, who was photographing the ransacked filing cabinets in the back office. Excuse me, Detective. I'm Patricia Whitmore's daughter. Has anyone checked the computer access logs from yesterday? He looked up from his camera. Computer logs? The foundation's bank account portal. If someone was looking for financial records, they might have tried to access the online banking system. 5 minutes later, I watched Detective Williams discover that someone had logged into the foundation's main account at 11:47 p.m. last night, 6 hours after Mom's supposed alibi placed her at a dental conference in Springfield. For hours until the gala, and Mom's perfect plan was starting to unravel. The Riverside Hotel ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, 300 of our community's most generous donors chatting over champagne while children's artwork decorated the walls. I sat at table 12 with Dad, both of us in our only good clothes, watching Mom work the crowd in a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Jake was stable at the hospital, finally receiving the 4 medications he needed. Dad thought we were here to support Mom. He had no idea that in 20 minutes, I was going to destroy our family to save it. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats," announced Robert Fitzgerald from the podium. "We're honored to present our volunteer coordinator, Patricia Whitmore, who will share some exciting updates about our programs." My hands trembled as Mom approached the microphone, her smile radiant under the stage lights. She looked like every donor's dream, the selfless suburban mother dedicating her life to helping children in need. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice warm and confident. "When I started volunteering with the Sunshine Foundation 3 years ago, I never imagined how deeply it would impact my family. My own son Jake has special needs, and watching this community rally around children like him has been." I stood up. The movement caught her attention mid-sentence, and for just a moment, her composure cracked. She knew what was coming. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I called out, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "But before my mother continues, there's something everyone needs to hear." Security moved toward me, but Robert Fitzgerald held up a hand. "Let her speak." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from Tuesday night. Mom's voice filled the ballroom through the sound system. "Everything I've done has been for this family's future. The foundation raises nearly $200,000 annually. I've taken 15% over 8 months." The crowd's reaction was immediate: gasps, confused murmurs, people turning to stare at Mom frozen behind the podium. But I wasn't finished. "Patricia Whitmore has stolen $31,000 from this foundation over the past 8 months, I announced, holding up the envelope of evidence. "Money that was supposed to help disabled children like my 8-year-old brother, who collapsed this morning because he can't afford the therapy your donations were meant to provide." Dad grabbed my arm. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "She's been blackmailing board members to stay quiet. She framed Linda Morrison and had her grandson arrested yesterday to send a message. She staged last night's break-in to plant evidence blaming Linda for her own crimes." Mom finally found her voice. "Sarah is having some kind of breakdown. The stress of college, her brother's condition." "Detective Williams?" I called out, spotting him near the back wall. "The login timestamps on the foundation's bank portal will show she accessed the accounts at 11:47 p.m. last night, 6 hours after her supposed alibi placed her in Springfield." Detective Williams stepped forward, and I watched Mom's face cycle through panic, calculation, and finally resignation. She'd run out of lies, out of scapegoats, out of time. "Patricia Whitmore," he said, approaching the stage, "you're under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud." The ballroom erupted as Mom was handcuffed at the podium where she planned to ask for more money to steal. Dad sat in stunned silence while donors demanded answers and board members huddled around the evidence envelope I'd handed to Robert Fitzgerald. 3 weeks later, Jake started intensive physical therapy funded by the foundation's restored budget. Mom pled guilty to avoid trial, receiving 4 years in prison and full restitution orders. Linda Morrison's grandson was released when Denver police discovered the planted evidence. I destroyed my family that night. But watching Jake take his first unassisted steps in months, seeing the foundation's programs fully restored, knowing that dozens of children would get the help they deserved, I realized I'd actually saved it. Some lies are too poisonous to let live, even when telling the truth costs everything you thought you loved.